Hey everyone, Jim and Chris back with another update. Today, we wanted to talk to you about something that a lot of clients are bringing into us, and that is short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. Our main focus here at SI Homes has always been long-term rentals, although, we're going to talk on the personal level a little bit with the short-term rentals. I still own short-term rentals. Chris used to own short-term rentals, and he has his own experience that he wants to tell you about. But overall, we have decided to stay with the long-term rental, especially for our clients, and there's a couple of reasons why. Our main job is to always be helping you get the best returns possible for a long-term rental portfolio, but also reduce risk. And we've seen a couple of things that have created risk within the short-term rental arena over the last 12 months especially, that we want you to be aware of. First off, I do want to tell you, they can be a great way to hold a more expensive property and not be at a huge cash flow loss if there's a lot of demand for them. They can also, if they're in high demand, have a much higher cash flow than a normal long-term rental. But with that said, there are some downturns that we've seen with the short-term rental arena. And the first thing is the law. There have been legal issues with short-term rentals in many areas here in Florida, other areas in the U.S. where I have investor friends where they would buy an investment property in a nice area, and then all of a sudden the county comes in and they block short-term rentals from being allowed. And at that point, you need to make sure that your basis in the property will be able to cover with a long-term rental amount. And this is where I get concerned for people, because we've seen it happen in some of our beach towns right here in our main market of Jacksonville. And if you get into a high basis and then all of a sudden you can't get that higher amount of rents, that could put you in a difficult situation. And another thing coupled with that is the amount that it will be rented, the occupancy. One thing you have to be careful of, 2020, at least the second half of 2020 in Florida and then into 2021, beginning of 2022, it was remarkable the amount of demand for short-term rentals. A lot of people were stay-at-home, schools were stay-at-home, people were traveling all over. They were living in short-term rentals, and the demand has never been seen to that level. And over the last 10 to 12 months, we've seen a tapering down to normal market levels. Kind of like, for a while we were at only three weeks of inventory in all of Florida. Now we're back to normal inventory levels. That's what we're seeing with the short-term rental market here as well. And I can speak from experience, not only from investors that I work with, but myself. I own, again, a good amount of still short-term rentals and long-term rentals. But what I saw with the short-term rentals is a big drop from the last 2 years. So if you're basing your numbers or projections off of the last 2 years through the pandemic, that could put you at a big loss if you're not getting that type of rent. So overall, it can be a great way to hold a higher end property, maybe not have as much a bleed, or even have a nice cash flow if you're in the right location. However, if they take away the legal right to do the short-term rentals, and if the demand is not as high and you are expecting way more occupancy than you're getting, it can put you at a real shortcoming, and we don't want to see that happen to you. Chris, I know you had some real close personal experience with this in some really prime areas with short-term rentals.
Yeah, and to me, that really is the key in my opinion. And again, there's a lot of different models out there that people are doing with short-term rentals, but I found it as a way to be able to buy higher end properties where I could not make the numbers work on a long-term lease basis. So, let's take a house that I bought on the ocean here in Jacksonville. And, as a long-term rental, this is one of the scenarios where we actually, as a short-term rental, this is one of the scenarios where we actually got a fair amount more rent than we would get with a long-term rental, and so we were able to have this great beach house property that we could use occasionally for the family if we wanted to, and then also basically holding that property long-term. So the income stream from the short-term rental, it wasn't that great. I mean, it did make money, but it wasn't phenomenal cash flow by any stretch of the imagination, particularly for the size of the property and the size of the loan that we had out there and the equity we had in it. But at the end of the day, we held that property for, I think, about 6 years, and the market appreciated significantly over that 6-year time period. so we were able to, really realize a nice gain on the exit of the property, which, is very beneficial from a tax perspective, where we're getting long-term capital gains versus ordinary income, when we're selling things within the first year. And, and before that, we were able to pick up some nice depreciation along the way to offset some of our ordinary income, which of course we had to recapture that when we sold it. But nonetheless, that's the strategy that I really like for short-term rentals, is being able to go after some of those higher end properties in a less risky way, because you are still getting cash flow, and letting the market do what the market does, which it goes up. Just over the long run, real estate goes up and to the right on the chart, and and this gives you some exposure to to those higher end properties that I wouldn't normally look at for long-term rentals. I will tell you the thing that we do hear a lot from folks when they're coming to look at long-term rentals is, hey, can I turn this into a short-term rental? And I think you got to be very careful about that, and really when you're evaluating these, don't say, hey, this is the property that I can afford, and I really want to do short-term rentals, so I'm going to do it on this property. That doesn't work. Not all properties can be short-term rentals, and we've seen folks in the market go out and not be in prime locations and not have a business plan. So if you're not in a prime location, you probably need to be close to a hospital, or you need to be close to some other venue that's driving a lot of traffic that is going to drive that short-term rental volume. Otherwise, you need to be near the beach or some attraction.
A downtown.
A downtown, exactly. So there needs to be some draw. But we see folks, putting short-term rentals up in the middle of the suburbs, on the far west side of Jacksonville, close to nothing. And and I don't think that those that those are going to work out well unless there's something that they're seeing that I'm not. But I think that's really important. Is most short-term rentals, you could put a long-term tenant in if you needed to, and you might not get the same cash flow from a long-term, or you might, like in Jim's case, he's found that a lot of his long-term rents, when you take into account the vacancy days of short-term, end up being the same rental amount. But but typically you can always get a long-term tenant in a short-term property. You can't always get a short-term person in a long-term property.
Great point. And I've seen with, and I think location is key. And again, just speaking from some of my personal, right near downtown St. Augustine, great area, my basis is really low in these properties. So I'm in a good position in these properties. But when I started to look at the higher rents, when you get a vacation manager, it's going to be 20%, opposed to 8 to 10% normally with a long-term manager. You're paying all utilities. You're paying for those fringe benefits if you have a pool and you're cleaning it, or a hot tub and you're cleaning it. The all utilities along with internet, those things start to add up. And if you have less days, then you have to do your math on that. And when I started to do the math, especially on a few of my properties, I said, well, I don't have to pay any of those. The inflationary effect is taking effect on the long-term rent rates. So I actually saw, for less headaches and involvement, I could be at a better cash flow now that I've held through to go long-term. And then, so it was simply a numbers decision for me. So it's really hard for Chris and I, especially with Chris selling out of all of his short-term rentals, and I still own some, but a few of them I've turned back to long-term, to really recommend. And again, it's not that you can't make money. It's not that I'm telling you not to do it. It's just we don't offer it because we said, let's be the best at just build to rent and long-term. And we know that we can remove a lot of the obstacles or unknowns in that one niche. And with, as we were explaining with short terms, we can't determine if there's going to be a legal ramification of changing the allowance of them. We can't determine if, well, okay, the rents are there's going to be less occupancy next year than there was this year because the pandemic, is it still dwindling down on visitations and stuff? We don't know. But we do know that for the long-term rentals, we're in the highest demand probably we've ever seen in about a year and a half. which we can back and feel good about. So do you have anything overall with that?
No, I mean, the only other thing that I would say that I saw in my short-term rental experience is, you just have a lot of tenants moving in and out of your house every week. So, you've got, probably 2 or 3 move-ins and move-outs every single week at a short-term rental. That just creates its own certain amount of wear and tear, which again is just something if you're really getting into short-term rentals that I think you really want to, think about when you do your renovation. It's actually a lot of the same things that we do in long-term rentals. Make sure that everything is durable. So if you're in a short-term rental, high-end home on the beach, okay, well maybe you don't put in LVP that we might put in a long-term, but you got to you can't put in that carpet either. You need to make sure that you're putting in like a high-end hardwood floor that can take the abuse of the sand and the water and everything being tracked in. Because people are there. A lot of times they're there to party, they're there to have fun, and they do put a little bit more wear and tear on your house. So, your renovation needs to be such that the house is designed to handle that sort of activity and constant moving in and moving out.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So overall, guys, there's lots of ways to make money in real estate investing. We've chosen the route of getting rid of older homes and fixer-uppers. We only do new construction. We do them in prime areas. Our niche and model right now. Short-term rentals are a viable niche. It's just something we've decided very consciously not to focus on. Yes, as Chris said, you can own in a higher-end area and possibly be closer to covering or even cash flowing. That's definitely possible, and in the right area, you could produce a higher cash flow. The downside of that is we do know about legal ramifications. That is a constant moving target right now in many areas, and also the occupancy is a very large moving target. And if you're depending on 25 days and you're getting 7 days, that could be really detrimental and put you in a bad situation, which we're just not comfortable with, nor, as Chris said, with the move-in, move-outs every week, sometimes twice a week. Are we comfortable with having that turn? We want to focus on our long-term management, which serves so many of you. So hopefully that gives a little bit of light of overall. We're going to be here for you for the long term. If you do decide to want to try to rent one of our new construction properties on a short-term basis, that is your right to own of your property, absolutely. It's just not something that we manage for you. So we do wish you well in anything you decide, and we're looking forward to doing more deals together with you. So take care.
Everyone.